what I really cherish is that there were many women who, because of both the political context as well as the kind of lives, personal choices they had made, many had children, and I grew up with a large contingent of brothers and sisters. So I was the oldest, and I had one sister and about 8 brothers. It was not something that was stated or some kind of political conversation. It was just how we were brought up. And among us, we have very strong connections of kinship, and we see each other as siblings to date. So that was really important for me because I never had a kind of a normative family structure. I never knew one. I just knew this family structure of 4 women, 4 mothers, and many siblings, all children of other activists, other women activists, some were left activists. I grew up with having 4 mothers, all playing different roles of caring and loving and kinship and safety for me. And I grew up with a large group of brothers and sisters. My name is Sarala Emmanuel. I'm from Sri Lanka, and I live and work in a small town in the east of the island, a town called Batticaloa. What I really cherish is that there were many women who, because of both the political context as well as the kind of lives, personal choices they had made, many had children, and I grew up with a large contingent of brothers and sisters. So I was the oldest, and I had one sister and about 8 brothers. It was not something that was stated or some kind of political conversation. It was just how we were brought up. And among us, we have very strong connections of kinship, and we see each other as siblings to date. So that was really important for me because I never had a kind of a normative family structure. I never knew one. I just knew this family structure of 4 women, 4 mothers, and many siblings, all children of other activists, other women activists, some were left activists. And then around us, there was always this, the fear, the challenges of the political context that was unrolling in the 80s in Sri Lanka. Many activists were being disappeared, many had to leave the country. One of my mothers, Sunila Besekar, also left the country because she was under threat. I remember a conversation with Sunila, and she was like, you know, if you really want to know this country, you need to leave Colombo. You need to leave the capital city. You need to go and live somewhere else. That's the only way you'll understand like why things are happening, what is happening, and you'll really kind of know this country, language, cultures, the conflict. So I was at a loose end. I mean, because I was a generation that went to school in the 1980s, school was closed a lot because of the political upheavals, and there was a delay. There was a 2-year delay between school and then going to university. During that time, Sunila talked to me about different places, different movements I could go and volunteer with. And I chose to go to Batticaloa in the east. And there's another feminist activist there, Chitralekha Maunaguru, whose son is one of my siblings. So she was there, she said, come, there's a feminist organization there, you can volunteer. And that's how I moved. And I think the other important thing that happened to me at that time was, there was a girl, Krishanti Kumaraswamy, and I was doing my final exams, A-levels, and she was also doing her A-levels. We were both going for our exams at the same time. I was in Colombo, she was in Jaffna, and she was raped and killed by the military. So that really kind of shook me, because I was like, she is my age, she's sitting the same exams that I am sitting. She was going to write her exams, she was in her school uniform. And she was stopped at a checkpoint and she was raped and killed, and then her family also was killed. This was in 1996, and that case then mobilized like a large response of the women's movements. There were protests every day, which I also started going to. It felt very close to me because she was my age. So that was another reason I wanted to go and try to understand what was happening, what was this war, and how it was affecting people. I grew up surrounded by, when I say grow up, I mean in the feminist movement, surrounded by these amazing community activists who were connected with Surya. And I was 19, I was from the city, I didn't speak the language, but just being around that space and seeing how they negotiate an everyday resistance in the context of kind of a terrible war that was happening around them all the time, how they created these small spaces for building solidarity, building trusted kind of spaces to share very difficult kind of experiences, also responding and resisting, for example, when sexual violence has taken place. Even when sexual violence, the perpetrators are connected, are like armed actors. And like I learned from them how one can be how one is or should be sensitive in support, in care, how you continue the struggle for justice, how you keep the call for justice and accountability going over long periods of time, how you build small collectives of support around these issues, as well as kind of create spaces of publicly talking about it when you can't. So I think Surya always used theater, poetry, other kind of creative means. Clothesline campaign, I think that's a kind of a global campaign. I think in Batiklo, the first clothesline was in 2000. All the garments were of women, children, girls who had experienced sexual violence in that context. Some in the home, some by armed actors, some by the military. So you create these spaces of not being silent, of finding ways to continue to ask, demand for peace. And I think I learned by being around these women. It was formed under feminist principles, so it's like a very flat structure. So it was formed in the early 90s. So that's the kind of structure that I also continued. I grew up in the organization. I started as a volunteer, and then even heading the organization, like we all really loved that structure. However, slowly it became apparent that one could say sisterhood as many times as one likes, but there is also power differences and hierarchies. And so that was one of the things that when I was also taking on leadership roles, I was like, okay, like no, sisterhood became almost like a joke, like a bad word. It's like, yeah, sure, it's a lie. Actually, decisions are made by those in power. So I was trying to balance both. Like, how do you acknowledge that, yes, one needs to have some kind of like a line of decision making, but how do you make it as participatory or as flat as possible? And just before I left, then we went through almost a 2-year process of figuring out how to like structurally incorporate these both things, where everyone then also is part of designing that. The other real kind of practical issue was funding, and the fact that there was so much pressure from funders about how an institution should function. And no funder, no auditor, no finance person could ever understand Surya. It was very confusing because they were like, what do you mean you have a committee who decides? Like, who is this committee? Like, so it was this kind of weird system that didn't make sense to anyone. And because it was funding, then there was also pressure to kind of build in more conventional systems, accounting systems. So slowly Surya was also becoming less flexible and had to kind of put in place lots of accounting kind of systems. And I remember having many conversations with donors, but also with other kind of women's organizations saying, and also with feminist donors saying, we need to really challenge this global funding model. And the worst end of that was the one with deliverables and milestones. I'm sure you have come across these words, where you get the money after you kind of complete certain things, right? So it's very similar to the outsourcing model of the garments industry or any kind of how the economy works generally. So the risk is just completely transferred to the organization, the most vulnerable in that chain of command. And if you're not able to finish something for whatever reason, you don't get the funding, which means like salaries, So to challenge that model to having more supportive funding systems that is flexible to activism, flexible to community women's leadership. After being with Surya for close to 15 years, and I was heading the organization for many years, I also felt I needed, and I was hitting my 40s, so I was like, I need to do something else. I felt getting comfortable into that position of being a head of a women's feminist organization, women's organization. I was getting comfortable with in a way, the power I had, the kind of respect I was getting, my connections internationally. And I got a bit scared. I was like, I've seen other feminist spaces where, if you are in these positions for too long, it changes the organization, it changes you. And I didn't want to become that. I resigned and I thought I'm going to go in another direction, find something else that will challenge me. So that's when I decided to join a trade union. Steep learning curve for me, completely different way of working. One of the kind of interactions that really kind of moved me was working with women who's not working. Being in solidarity with women whose family members had been disappeared, husbands, sons. And over the course of time, there's nothing one can do about it. It's not like we were going to find the person. There was no legal remedy, but the being with each other in the constant kind of journey, the constant search, the constant asking for answers and truth, and their strength in a way and their kind of power that they kind of brought to these movements, the power of, motherhood, the power of grief, lament, even faith, like invoking kind of the wrath of, goddesses and, being possessed by goddesses, all these different spaces that women used to be able to speak about what was going on around them, demanding justice. And those movements, just being part of these movements, like gave me courage. And like when you see that kind of strength and like fearlessness in the search for your child, it gives you also like courage to keep going, to support each other. In Batticaloa in the east all the time, but definitely after the tsunami, so 2004 onwards, there was a lot of child abductions and child recruitment into the armed groups. So that was really, really, really a terrible time for women. And they were trying to find children, they were trying to negotiate release of children. And if children did run away, they were trying to hide the children so they were not picked up again. So being part of those kinds of groups of mothers really also gave me strength, and others who we were working together as a collective. And again, we used poetry, we used padayatras, kind of silent walk, one behind the other, in public, as a way of keeping the issue in public space. Many of the women, they were also young, especially the women who were searching for their husbands, also very young. The women at Surya, like just not that much older than me, a few years older than me, and had also become part of these collectives as young women themselves. The women who were in the cultural, the theatre group were younger than me. So it was quite a vibrant space in that way. I don't fit in any box. I don't fit in the Tamil box. I don't fit in the Sinhala box. I'm not from there. I'm an outsider, so nobody could figure me out. So it's always then risky, right? Then because you're suspect to all sides. What are you doing there? Who are you? Kind of. But because it was this collective feminist space, there was a way of protecting each other and protecting me, where I never felt that I was in danger. What is special about Surya? Because Surya was formed by feminist activists, including Sunila, Anberia. So they were none of them fit into any ethnic identity box. They were in solidarity as feminists. And Surya always maintained that. It was always connected outside of Batticaloa, within the country, but also at a South Asian level. And in 2010, after the war had ended, a very close friend of mine, kind of in passing said, Surya is being run by a Sinhala woman. I was like, who? Who is this? And she was talking about me. And I was like, all these years you looked at me and this is how you saw me. And that really shook me, because I'm like, I've been naive maybe, that I assumed that, my ethnic identity wouldn't matter. And I mean, clearly that was not the first time she had thought of that. Which then I actually very seriously thought about who I am. I think until that point, the part of me that I embraced wholeheartedly was my Tamil identity, because I come from a mixed kind of background, and I didn't grow up in that Tamil identity because my mother was a single mom. She was Sinhala, so I grew up studying in Sinhala, speaking Sinhala, didn't learn a word of Tamil. And I learned Tamil only after I moved to Batiklo. So I was trying to find out my Tamilness. And then when she said this in 2010, I was like, okay, this is also me. I mean, I can get upset about it, but it is also me. I am also Sinhala. I am not from Batiklo. And it took many weeks for me to kind of figure out then who am I and what do I embrace about myself. I'm mixed ethnically. I speak both languages. I'm mixed in my religious faiths. And now I just joke and I say it, I'm mixed. I don't fit into any of these boxes. But that was a journey in itself. After I left, I think a few months after I left, things kind of fell apart. Like I still haven't really fully, this is many years ago, but I am kind of very torn by that. Because, I mean, it's a space I invested for 15 years and I resign and it kind of falls apart. Like, what did I build then, you know? It fell up. The reasons are different. There are many reasons for why it happened. Did work for close to 9 years. This kind of balancing these different demands and still trying to maintain that space. It also included things like having workshops on the values of the organization. So whatever we are talking about outside should also be in the organization. So what does autonomous mean? What does sisterhood mean, of course? What does transparency mean? Accountability to whom, where, you know? And I think also because with newer staff, you can't assume you have the same feminist politics. Some may not even call themselves feminist, right? And there's a generation, like me being the tail end of it, of the 80s, who had a particular feminist politics, like Sunila and all of them. But the next generation didn't. So you had to really, again, talk about what these concepts mean. Long debate about why should Surya be a women-only space. And even that, there was debates, like why should it be a women-only space? Why can't men work here? What is the difference of a women-only space? Why? And then it becomes more complicated when you start working with, when you at least, Surya is not working openly like that, but when you have to kind of face the kind of new developments of having different genders. So if you say women-only space, then how does that incorporate other genders, right? So those were all kind of ongoing conversations that we were having before I left. And then that got written up and everyone was supposed to like know it. But yeah, so I think maintaining different kind of institutional spaces is a hard thing also because there are demands from various sides that require particular forms of accountability, which has a particular idea of what a board is, what role a board should play, who decides things like salaries, because at Surya everybody knew everybody's salary scales were like openly discussed and fixed. So those kinds of things, it's hard to kind of fight for it and show that it works. It's important, but I think it's not easy. Surya had, like I said, from its inception was connected to the South Asian regional feminist movements. And I think it continued to do so. And then, of course, the connection with Tamil feminists. And in the context of the war, those were the connections that sustained the spaces of resistance, spaces of kind of asking questions, of challenging the state, challenging the armed groups themselves, using theatre, poetry, etc., and learning. And those were always vibrant kind of spaces. And there were times when feminist activists would go to Tamil Nadu, and of course Mange came many times to Surya and worked with the women's cultural group. It is to date, I think, one of the few, if not only, women-only feminist cultural group in the Tamil-speaking group in Sri Lanka. So that has always nourished and been really important in keeping the feminist movement and spaces alive. And along with that, I think with the start of the Sangat Tamil language course, that created an amazing space, because for grassroots or like community-based women activists, you can't access many of the other kind of trainings that are political. You know, you can go for gender trainings, various things, but this kind of political space where you have critical conversations about feminism, patriarchy, etc. This was the only space. And because it was accessible to community-based women, over 12 years, many women leaders were part of that. And then you would meet sisters from Tamil Nadu, right? And it was always in Madurai, so you get to visit and you meet all these other activists. So that being engaged with that has been really an important kind of across the seas engagement. And for me personally, like one is with the feminist peace work. I learned a lot, and regional, so for that it is not just South Asia. So let me say it like this. For South Asia, mostly those kind of rich conversations were with Nepal actually, and then sometimes with Northeast India. More broadly Asia, it was with East Timor, many other feminist groups in Indonesia, so it was much broader. And there were kind of feminist peace movements who had done post-war transitional justice work. And those, kind of meeting those movements was really important. And from Indonesia, actually, they came to Sri Lanka once, and we had a lovely program sharing experiences across what had happened in East Timor with what was happening in Sri Lanka at the time. So with the feminist kind of peace movements, my engagement personally had been really nourished and really rich. For example, in Nepal, I don't remember the year, but they had done a independent commission on sexual violence, because the state obviously was not dealing with it, but to say that this did happen. So it was done, and the process of how they had done it with maintaining, the preparatory work that is needed, how to maintain confidentiality, and also to give the space for women to say what they wanted as accountability. So that was really important for us to think about the work we were doing on sexual violence, because for years we've been supporting survivors. Now, if there's a space to actually talk about accountability for sexual violence, then how to imagine something that actually we may have to think of it as independent of the state, because the state is never going to do it. So those kinds of sharings has been really formative for me.
Feminist.